so obviously this is really bad, right? I'm an IV heroin user. I'm now getting in legal trouble, stealing other kind of crimes to feed my habit.
What were you stealing?
Jewelry from family, friends, writing fake checks, trying to find a way to get $20, right, for the day.
That's my friend Vince Huseman, just a great guy, and he's got a great story, lives a really positive life here in Denver. He's married, has a young kid, a handsome fella too, and he works for a great organization that promotes sober, active living. But it never used to be like that for Vince. He had a hard road getting here. He's a recovering heroin addict, and he spent some time in jail. And Vince's going to be here to tell you his powerful story. You're going to love him on this week's VV's BFB. Well, let's talk about your youth, because I know you struggled. Your parents divorced. Dad has German heritage, mom Mexican-American. You lived with your mom growing up pretty much. What kinds of struggles did you have kind of in school and kind of finding yourself?
Yes, I can remember from a young age, as far as, elementary school, which was in North Denver, just feelings of insecurity and fear, and whether it was like, afraid of getting bullied, or, kids were getting jumped in elementary school. And
tough school.
Yeah, it didn't happen super frequently, but it was still something I witnessed as a kid in elementary school. So, it had an impact on me. And then, or fear of being away from my mom. I had a really huge fear of not being close to her.
Yep, I can relate to that, man. I can relate to that. I remember I never went to preschool, and the first time my mom dropped me off at kindergarten was the first time I was ever away from her. And so when she dropped me off, I was crying like a baby all day for my mom.
That's funny you say that, because I have this very vivid memory of something similar.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so, I had a lot of those feelings, starting back when I was in elementary school, and who knows really where they came from. My mom did her best, raising me. I would see my dad, on the weekends, and, me and my mom, we were, there was a lack of stability there for quite some time. We lived really grew up at my grandmother's house, and my grandparents, my grandma, my grandpa, my mom's parents, they lived in North Denver, and we spent a lot of time there, but we did move around a lot in the North Denver area. And so maybe it was just kind of a lack of stability, maybe not having my dad around as much, that who knows really why, the underlying cause of these feelings of fear and insecurity that I had as a young kid. But that really continued into, getting into middle school, and those feelings continued to grow. I think things get tougher as a kid as you grow.
Oh, it's so hard.
Puberty and trying to fit in, right? And I think all kids experience those feelings to a certain extent. And my way of dealing with that eventually led to drinking. I think I started drinking in 8th grade.
Yeah, so talk about that. So you how did you find alcohol for the first time?
Yeah, so I met a friend in middle school. I think it was in 7th grade we had met, and we ended up being friends through high school, but had gotten into a lot of trouble together, addiction and all that stuff. But we met in 7th or 8th grade, and I can't really remember the first time we drank, but it was probably we were in somebody's liquor cabinet, right? Whether it was his mom's or at my grandparents' house, and we, it was seemed innocent. We drank a little bit. Nobody was home, and I think that was it. We just kind of hung out there, and I remember those feelings of insecurity and just all those feelings I described just were wiped out, completely wiped out.
Yeah.
And it was fun. We would have so much fun together. And it was still, we weren't drinking very often, but it was on occasion. But that's initially when it started.
Oh, it was a blast, man. You hanging out with your buddies and and you find this thing that magically just makes all of your problems evaporate.
It was a very effective tool in the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, and that's why it's so hard to kick. And that's what's the seductiveness of alcohol, the way it makes you feel.
Yeah.
And that kind of and you kind of just kind of continued that through middle school and into high school.
Yeah. So getting into high school, I went to Lakewood High, same high school as my buddy I met in middle school, which I was really stoked on, but he was the only person that I knew at the school, at the high school. And, I could see freshman year, still having those feelings, right? Obviously, it's a very scary time for a freshman going to high school. But I noticed a lot of the kids in high school had a big group of friends already, and maybe they had went to middle school together, and a lot of them had also went to elementary school together. And to me, when I think back on that, it speaks to like the stability that those kids had growing up, where they weren't moving around, changing schools. They had solid roots and friendships and relationships heading into high school. And I think that's really important. I know, at least for me, it was really challenging to not know anybody. Of course, those feelings of wanting to fit in and wanting people to like me, and the feelings of insecurity and fear, those of course continued into high school, and it was probably about my sophomore year. So kind of backing up, I've been a drummer for most of my life. My cousin is an incredible drummer, and so was my uncle. My cousin taught me from a young age, but it was in my sophomore year of high school, I joined a band with my cousin and a few other guys, and I played percussion and drums kind of alongside my cousin.
What was the name of the band?
Transitus.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
And I was 15 or 16. And the feeling that I got from playing live music, creating music, and playing it for a crowd, it was incredible. And so I started to chase that, and that's where I felt comfortable and at peace. And I had already was not doing well in high school my freshman year, but then I found music and performance on this kind of level where we were playing all around the Denver metro area and venues, and I put all of my energy in that direction.
What was that like? You described like that feeling from the crowd. I mean, I kind of put yourself in the seat. You got the sticks. You're going. The crowd's digging what you're doing. What's that feeling like?
I mean, it's a high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet.
It's a high.
I bet.
And on top of that, playing songs that you've spent hours and hours and hours practicing over and over again with this group of guys, and you practice it so much, get everything down to the T, and then finally you're on stage to perform those songs for people, and to hear, a good reaction obviously is what we were hoping for.
Well, especially for you as a kid who
Yeah.
you've been struggling before that.
Right. And so I did get a lot of validation from
Yeah.
that, right? And I was 16 in 21 and up venues all around Denver, playing for not huge crowds. I think the biggest maybe a few hundred people, but nonetheless, at that age, having people ask me for my autograph, having people take pictures with me, having a green room, the backstage room where
Yep.
like you get anything you ask for, all the alcohol you could want,
Yep.
was fun.
Yeah, hell
It
yeah.
was awesome.
Yeah.
And so that's really where, like, I had already been drinking on occasion, but that's really where my substance use took off. Mm-hmm. Was in that environment. And I had venue owners, well, I won't say owners plural. There was one venue owner who I think had given me cocaine for the first time, and it was before we were about to go on stage, and he had told me, "Hey, there's something in the kitchen for you." And I go back there, and there's just like a dinner plate with some lines of cocaine on it, and a rolled up bill.
Yeah.
And I did it,
Yeah.
no questions asked. But thinking back on that now, it's like I can't believe, number one, that I was allowed to play in that venue
Yeah.
as a kid, and that the owner of the venue was providing
It's just wild.
drugs for me.
I could just picture some mom listening, like it was a 16-year-old kid. That guy did what?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. What was that feeling like doing that cocaine for the first time?
Yeah,
Because that's my drug, man.
yeah, it eventually, towards the end of my addiction journey, was my my drug as well. Again, it was great.
Yeah.
It was, it was another solution for the feelings, the feelings of insecurity that I was having. Excuse me. And I felt like I was on top of the world. That mixed with, playing music and playing for a crowd. Obviously, there's a reason they say it's the rock and roll lifestyle. But it was incredible for a while there until it wasn't. Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, those are, I can't imagine. I can't imagine the high of cocaine because I'm a cocaine addict. But combining that with youth and playing drums for people that enjoy what you're doing, and the applause and the selfies and the attention and the warmth. Holy shit, that is an incredible combination. Cocaine in and of itself, right? Like the very first time I did cocaine, I'm like, I don't know about this thing. Did it? I'm fucking Hercules.
Yeah.
I am Hercules, man. And I'm like, I'm doing this every day.
Yeah. Yep. And that's where it eventually led to. But yeah, it was intoxicating, and it initially didn't. I mean, I say it didn't get in the way of the music and us practicing. Obviously, we probably would have done a lot better had we not been using and drinking, right? But that lasted some time. We had a good run of making music, and ended up having all of our equipment was stolen out of our practice space. It was like $30,000 worth of gear, and that kind of started the falling out. We just weren't able to recoup after that, and so I ended up kind of we all kind of just went our separate ways.
And you're still in high school?
Still in high school. I think I was 17 at that time. And so my identities changed so much, I felt like, in high school. And maybe that was, I think, partly, I feel like I can, it's interesting. Although I felt like I didn't fit in with anybody, thinking on it now, I feel like I can get along with a lot of different types of people, a lot of different groups of people, that I have that ability to fit in with a lot of different people.
Because of what you went through.
Because of what I went through. But, so I kind of went from rock star kid to like hanging out with the jocks after that, and, changed the way I dressed, changed the way I acted. I wasn't really playing music anymore. But the substance use was still there, right? So the partying continued, and it was probably, I don't know if it was I think it might have been the end of my junior year, when I basically failed every year of high school. At a certain point, I was really just going there for the social aspect of it. I knew, like, it's depressing to think back on, like, thinking back when I was struggling in high school. There was a point before substances really took over that I think most of what was keeping me from being able to focus on my studies was the, like, crippling kind of anxiety and fear and the social aspect of high school. I just could not even begin to understand how kids were focusing on schoolwork during those years of growth. And so
it was that consuming.
It was that consuming for me, when all I was focused on was like trying to make friends, like trying to fit in, feeling so uncomfortable. And of course, through the years in high school, the substances increased. And so probably end of my junior year, the high school basically was like wanting to kick me out. They had been for quite some time. And I think back at a time when I needed more support. Getting kicked out was certainly not going to get me more support. It was going to get me less. But that's ultimately what happened. Was I ended up dropping out, I think, end of my junior year, and going to an alternative high school.
Okay.
And thinking back on it now, I think the high school was basically self-paced, on a computer. I don't even think there was a teacher around. Maybe there was someone, staff-wise, who was observing. I don't quite remember, but hardly any support. And I was certainly, if I couldn't cut it in high school, where there were plenty of staff and faculty around to support me, even though I don't feel like I really got that support, there was no way I was going to be successful in this kind of self-paced online learning environment.
That's tough, man. Talk about just like no direction, right?
Yeah, so I pretended basically for a little bit, until finally I was like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
And then ultimately really dropped out probably when I was around 18.
What was that like? How did that feel? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, it didn't, I still think back, and I really had blinders on, like I was not future focused at all. It's almost bizarre to think back when, like, I think to myself, what was going through my head when I was that age? And I can't really tell you. I know I was focused in the now. I was focused on my emotions in that moment, how I was feeling in that moment, and that was really it. I wasn't worried about the future or how things were going to affect me. And who knows if I would have, my mom certainly was on me as much as she could be about finishing high school. And when I dropped out, she's like, okay, well, you need to get your GED. Mm-hmm. And she could only do so much, couldn't force me. And so, I knew there was disappointment from her and other family when I dropped out. But I didn't feel that disappointment. I think probably some more anxiety around, like, I know this isn't right, but I just didn't even feel capable of. I felt like I'd already dug myself into such a big hole as with education. Like, I had no credits basically by the time I was 18. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, it's a lost cause.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was certainly some disappointment there. But I continued to, I think, just kind of drowned out those feelings of either the uncomfortable feelings of disappointment and insecurity and whatnot. And just continue to drown those out with the social life, with friends and substances.
So how did that progress and obviously progressively get worse, right?
Yeah, much worse. It was, I say it was somewhat still like innocent at that point, parties on the weekends, with other people who were still taking care of their responsibilities, had maybe graduated high school and had a job and whatnot, and still having that. I was still having that kind of social experience with people I went to high school with. And at a certain point, I think I was 19, I started using OxyContin with a group of my friends I went to high school with. And, we would do it on occasion, maybe on the weekends sometimes, and we'd go like play some recreational sports at the park or something, or like play some video games or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Weren't like getting into trouble. We were doing Oxy and just kind of going out and having fun. And that continued and progressed until I remember one morning pretty vividly when I woke up at my buddy's house, where we would all hang out and do Oxy. I woke up feeling sick, and I think it dawned on me at that point that I knew it was because I needed more Oxy.
Yeah.
Years leading up to that, using substances, I don't remember hearing the word addiction or learning about the consequences of using, as far as like, I knew the consequences of like, I'm not getting a good job, I didn't get a high school diploma, those kinds of things. But as far as becoming physically and mentally dependent on a substance, I don't think I really knew what that was. But at that moment, I had realized it was because I was addicted. And instead of seeking help, I got more OxyContin, right? Mm-hmm. I knew that seemed a lot easier, I think, for me at that moment, of like, if I just take some more Oxy, this is going to go away, instead of experiencing those symptoms. And
yep. Because withdrawal is hell. Yeah. And, especially for you at that time, you didn't even know what addiction or withdrawal was, except for what you were feeling. And you knew that you just did not want to feel like this anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
And it hadn't even dawned on me, I think, to like come clean to my family or like anything about inpatient or like rehab or anything.
Yeah.
Like that wasn't, you know, I didn't really know anything about addiction, so I don't think I really knew anything about addiction treatment. And so that was the easiest solution. And so the oxy use continued, and you know, another pivotal moment I remember in my addiction was when I walked in on a couple of those same friends smoking heroin. And I think in that moment, I didn't know what it was really. I knew it wasn't oxy, and I knew it was something serious. And I was kind of taken back and like, whoa, you know.
Because I'm sure you had heard the word heroin in
Totally.
like in movies or whatever, and you knew that it was major.
Right.
Yeah.
I knew it was serious. Didn't know what it looked like.
Yeah.
Didn't know how you used it. Didn't know the consequences of it, anything like that. But I was still kind of taken back and like, whoa, what are you guys doing? Mm-hmm. And they said, well, we're doing heroin. And they were kind of like, you can try it if you want, but, you know, it's like they were opening the door for me, but also saying like, maybe it's not the best idea.
I get it. Yeah, I get it.
And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'm not messing around with that. And I left. And that only lasted so long until the point where I couldn't afford Oxycontin anymore because heroin was much, much cheaper and much stronger. And so the day that I remember not having money and experiencing withdrawal, then I was like, okay, I'll try some heroin.
How old were you?
I think 19.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
This is the next step.
That was the next step. And so from then on was me getting into that world, finding a heroin dealer, and feeding that addiction. And that continued with some of the same friends who were doing oxy, right? They were getting addicted as well, and we were all still kind of using together. And so...
Was there ever like a thought of like, most people don't live this way, right? Like I'm just doing...
Totally.
I'm smoking heroin, like, right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to... I mean, yeah.
Yeah. It's really hard for me to think back and put a finger on, like, you know, it seems so common sense and simple to say, didn't you think about stopping or not doing heroin or not doing oxy?
Yeah.
And it happens really quickly.
And people do say that just, you know, I don't mean to knock anyone who hasn't done those drugs. It's just that you don't understand until you're actually in that situation, right? Yeah. And all these check marks were leading you toward that. This trouble is youth, right? Like
right.
School, like the procession of alcohol and drugs that led to this moment. And these are your buddies.
Yeah.
And it feels good. It feels fucking good.
Yep. So I had a lot of those boxes checked, like you mentioned, a lot of the risk factors for doing these hard drugs. And, you know, it doesn't discriminate. And I think it's easy to judge someone who has gone through that experience, but I think it's important for us to remind ourselves that we don't know what that person's trying to heal from. And it may not sound like I went through anything like super traumatic, but I still had things I was trying to heal from and feelings I was trying to escape.
Yeah.
And there are some people who, put their nose in a book in their studies in school because they're not popular and they don't fit in. And luckily, they choose that pathway. And I think it really, for me, had to do with the people I was around.
Mm-hmm.
And from the very beginning back in 8th grade. And the kids I was hanging out with, they weren't focused on their studies. They instead were deciding to drink. And so that was a very easy...
Yeah. And you love these guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, you love these guys.
That was a very easy step to take. And each step, it's like, it's just one step, right?
Yeah.
But then at that point, I had taken 100 steps in the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And each step, it got worse. It didn't seem like that big of a step from where I was.
Man, that is so smart. That is so important, because I think especially for parents who may watch this who have teenagers who maybe they don't see that step until they know that their kid's using this drug. And they're like, why are you doing this? But they didn't see the 99 other steps that did not include drug use.
Right.
That got them to this point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, my mom also didn't know anything about addiction. And so she hadn't really seen the signs early on either. I mean, she knew that I obviously dropped out of high school, but as far as like identifying those as risk factors for addiction, she didn't know anything about that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were both caught off guard, and it took her some time to catch on, and she had to learn, right? She went through a lot in her journey through my addiction. But I guess, back to my use, the heroin use progressed, and it was kind of the same story as before, where at a certain point, the heroin wasn't having the same effect that it did before. And so that's when I took another step, and I went to being an IV user.
Yeah, and for people who don't know, it's just more intense, it's faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was, again, a solution.
Mm-hmm.
Because the same amount of drugs that I was buying for the same amount of money weren't having the same effect. And this was a way to get more out of what the amount I was buying. I didn't have endless resources, right? I didn't have money. My family didn't have money. I had to find ways to get money to feed my habit. And so it was a kind of easy progression for me to get the most bang for my buck.
You're a value shopper.
Exactly.
It's like you had coupons.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a bad dream when I think about having been in that position, and just like where I'm at now, and sometimes telling people that I was an IV user, it's like it's hard for them to believe. And again, I think that goes back to the point of it not discriminating, and I was making the best decision that I thought in that moment to help with the way that I was feeling in that moment. And so obviously this is really bad, right? I'm an IV heroin user. I'm now getting in legal trouble, stealing, other kind of crimes to feed my habit.
What were you stealing?
Jewelry from family, friends, writing fake checks, that's basically the gist of it, stealing and pawning things and trying to find a way to get $20, right, for the day.
Yeah.
And
It's a hustle.
it's a hustle. And so I got my first felony, and there's a program called diversion where if you complete it successfully, I think you might still get a charge, a conviction. Maybe they bring it down to a misdemeanor, but you get an opportunity to not get the felony if you complete diversion. And so I was put on diversion, and essentially, like, I met with my diversion officer, and she gave me a meeting list, a 12-step meeting list, and said, like, go to meetings and good luck, basically. Yeah. Like, take your UAs and go to meetings. And, for folks who have been that addicted to something before, to drugs or alcohol, know that that's not going to be enough to get you off of that drug. Yeah. And so it was really like I was screwed from the get-go of diversion. So I failed.
And there's no resources other than just someone.
There were no resources.
Paperwork.
The lady was a hard ass and was just like, do this or fail. Yeah. And that I needed treatment. I needed real support. And I remember my mom and I kind of pleading with the courts to help me find a scholarship, or if they could scholarship me into some treatment, because we were, low income. My mom's low income. Mm-hmm. We didn't have the resources or money to get into treatment. And they had basically determined that I wasn't bad enough for them to cover inpatient treatment. And basically after that point, then I had failed diversion and got a felony on my record.
I mean, to have a system where you're not bad enough for us to intervene.
Right.
Wow.
Until it's basically like, go catch a couple felonies. Yeah. And then,
more victims.
Potentially, right, more victims, potentially ruin the rest of your life with these felonies before we step in and support you with the treatment that you need. And so I ended up going to jail twice. Once was like over a weekend or so, and I withdrawed in jail.
Oh,
that was my first experience of that.
Fuck.
And it was hell.
Jesus.
A nightmare. It's hard to put into words how terrible that experience was. What? And I've had the flu, and I've had COVID, and when I was younger, I would get pneumonia all the time because I had asthma. Like, I've been sick a lot. Mm-hmm. And withdrawing from heroin, it's the worst I've ever felt. There's no comparison to it. And so, I can say it's kind of like having the flu, but it's like the flu on steroids. It feels like you're dying. Yeah. And experiencing that in jail, they don't care, obviously.
I was just going to ask, did anyone
they don't care. And so
no medical unit, or
I think they might have been giving me, I think they were checking my heart rate every day. And I can't remember if I don't think they really gave me anything to help my withdrawal.
Man, that's brutal.
But from the sheriffs who were in the pod, obviously there was no, they didn't care that I was withdrawing, right? So like they still made me kind of get up and like clean and do things when all I felt capable of doing was laying.
Oh, Vince, man, I'm sorry you went through that. Fuck me.
It was awful. And the even crazier thing is that I got out after 4 days or so, and I had kind of got through the worst of the withdrawal, and I was like, wow, that had been the first time in a while that I had any length of sobriety, and I was feeling pretty dang good.
All right.
And I went right back to using.
Of course.
I went right back to looking for heroin.
Yeah.
And so at that point, I was out on bail. I started using again, and I did not comply with bail. I didn't go back to court to see the judge, and at that point, I had warrants out for my arrest.
Yeah.
And so from that point, I continued to catch some, it's all kind of a blur thinking back on it, but I think I caught...
It's that damn motorcycle again.
I think I caught maybe a couple more charges, but I was kind of on the run, I guess, so to speak, right? I had some warrants out for my arrest, and I'm guessing bounty hunters who were looking for me because I was out on bail. And there was a moment when, I had been living with my mom, and she was going through all of this, and it was just complete hell for her. And finally, she had given me the ultimatum: either you need to turn yourself in, or you can't live here.
I got to ask you, you love your mom. I mean, for her to be put in a situation where she's even saying something like that to you has got to be devastating.
I know it was so hard for her. I have two older sisters. I have a younger brother, but from my dad and my stepmom. But my mom, I'm her baby. It's my two older sisters and me. And for her to get to that point, I know it just had to be devastating for her to basically say to herself, okay, like, I've got to be comfortable with him going to jail, because I can't allow him to live here anymore and destroy his life. And so when she had given me that ultimatum, I essentially stole her car and went and lived in her car for about 4 months.
Wow.
I think it might have been my grandpa's car, but he had given it to my mom, and I hear now that they had conversations with my grandpa and maybe my mom and my grandma about filing a police report, filing it stolen. And I think my grandpa had said, no, like he'll come back. Luckily I did. That wasn't guaranteed. But for several months, my mom hadn't heard from me. Nobody had heard from me. And so for all she knew, I could have overdosed and died, gotten mixed up with drug dealers, she had no idea. And I think after a certain point, probably a couple of months, she kind of considered me missing. And so she had put missing posters up of, my face all around the Denver metro area.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you see any of them?
I don't remember seeing any, but I remember...
Ryder's part of the show, by the way. So anything Ryder does, Ryder came in, was handing her bones to my guest yesterday. So please go on. That rude interruption, Ryder.
Ryder was just checking in on us. I remember hearing from other people who had seen those missing posters, and at that time I had been giving drug dealers rides for drugs. I'd give them rides to do drug deals, and they would give me drugs in return.
It's a good trade.
It was a good trade. And it got to a point where they had seen the missing posters of me. This was probably after 4 months of working with them and like living in a car. They had seen those missing posters, and they told me I needed to go home.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but I just think the dealers are like, dude, you need to go home.
You know it's bad if the drug dealer doesn't want your business anymore and is telling you to go home.
Oh, man.
And, you know, that's kind of a whole other story, but it was like a group of young Hondurans from like 16 to 21 who were all dealers. And I had made, I won't say friends, but I was giving them all rides, and they were telling me I needed to go home.
Wow.
And so they basically cut me off.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
They cut me off, and, you know, I think also because they were afraid that cops were looking for me. Like, do they really care about me? Probably not. But nonetheless, those missing posters helped get me back home. Because they cut me off, and I ended up basically like withdrawing for a couple of days, you know, living in the car. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'm done. Like this, I got to stop. And so I called my mom. That had been the first time she heard from me in months. And I asked her if I could come home. You know, she's like in tears. I'm on a payphone. You know, I guess there were still payphones, whatever, 9-10 years ago, at a 7-Eleven. And, you know, and she's crying, and she's like, of course you can come home. And so I went home, and I got cleaned up. She kind of, you know, helped take care of me while I was withdrawing. And she did something that was the right thing to do, and I know it was probably very hard for her to do. She called the bounty hunters while I was at home. And I remember just sitting, watching TV, already texting one of my buddies, like, hey, we're going to go pick up some drugs. I'm already making plans.
Wow.
Yeah, man. I was so addicted.
She knew you weren't ready.
She knew I wasn't ready.
Wow.
And I remember we were in like a ground level apartment, and I remember seeing somebody walk kind of past the sliding glass door, like really looking at me, and I didn't really think anything of it.
Oh, man.
And then there's a knock on the door, and it's two like big dudes, bounty hunters. And my mom, I was like, let me go out to the patio real quick to smoke. And she knew. She's like, please don't run. I was about to run. And the bounty hunter's like, I'll tase you. If you run, I'm going to tase you.
Oh, man.
And so I didn't run. They handcuffed me and took me to jail.
Wow, man.
And so my second stay in jail, I was there for about 90 days. And basically waiting to be sentenced the entire time. You know, I'd have a court date. They would schedule another court date out 30 days, and that repeated a couple times until finally my sentencing day came about 90 days in, and they gave me time served. And, you know, I could probably spend all day on there's just so much destruction and stuff that happened within my active addiction. But, you know, I'll try to speed it up a little bit. I got on probation. I got out of jail. I got on probation, and I stayed sober for a year. And, you know, that's not the end of my addiction and my use. I still had to learn the fact that I needed complete sobriety and abstinence. And after that year of sobriety on probation, I convinced myself it was a phase. I was hanging out with the wrong crowd, and I just want to have a beer. I just want to enjoy a beer like
so
everybody
common.
else, right?
So common.
I want to go to a ball game, have a beer, go to happy hour, have some lunch. And I convinced myself that I could make that work. And, you know, it took me from like, you know, basically from 16 when I really started using to like 23 or so to get into that hole that I'd found myself in, which was living in a car and being an IV heroin user. When I relapsed after that year of sobriety, after I successfully completed probation, it took me about 9 months to get back deeper, back into that hole, but deeper this time. And this time, it was cocaine. And I started drinking heavily and started using cocaine. And that it was every single day. And luckily, I didn't get any more legal trouble because I would have been in some serious trouble. I think at that point, I had a couple of felonies and a few misdemeanors. And my girlfriend at the time, who's my wife now, and my mom. So my girlfriend from way back in the day from high school, who had experienced a lot of this stuff. And of course, there were moments in there when we had falling outs and she had to make the best decision for her and go her separate way. And we ended up getting reconnected but I still was not kind of out of the shitstorm of active addiction. But there was a point where her and my mom, it dawned on them, like, okay, we've seen this before. He's withdrawing. He's not returning phone calls or texts. Like, we know something is up.
Good for them. They've seen this movie.
Yeah. And they know how it ends.
Yeah.
Well, it either ends in prison or death, most likely. And luckily, they basically forced me back into treatment. So I didn't really touch on treatment the first time, but I'd been before. And this was my second stay in inpatient treatment. Mm-hmm. And that was in 2016. And I've been sober since.
That's great, man.
So it was a 30-day program. And, I think it finally set in that I needed complete abstinence from drugs and alcohol.
What clicked? What was it?
I don't know if it was, I can't really point to one moment where it was like a click. It was years of, getting hit in the head with the obvious that finally was like, okay, this is my life. I need sobriety.
That's the same with me, man, because everyone uses that word rock bottom, right? Yeah. And a lot of people, they will reach a rock bottom that turns their life around, going to prison or even killing someone, God forbid, right? But a lot of people, myself included, it's just you stop, you surrender just from pure fucking exhaustion.
Yeah.
Just tired of living like this.
Yeah. I'm like, what, if going to jail wasn't a bottom, because I started using after that. Yeah. Living in a car, and then I was still, when I came back home after living in a car for several months and using, I was still ready to go back out. So it would have either been like real prison time or hurting somebody else or really hurting myself or overdosing and dying. And so it's like I had plenty of bottoms, I could say, should have turned me around. But I think at that point it was just like exhaustion. Finally, and I've heard this said before, and I think finally it was easier to move forward in sobriety than it was to go back. Whereas before, it seemed easier to keep using. The easy path was to keep using. The hard path was to get sober. And after getting out of treatment that second time, of course, I knew I needed sobriety. That had been drilled in at that point. And there was, I had done all the experimentation. There was no questioning at that point. I tried the alcohol. I tried this. I tried that.
Yeah.
But at that point, getting out of treatment, having some, sustained sobriety, continuing on that path of sobriety was going to be less painful than going back. And so I think that's where I found myself. And so I did what, they recommended in treatment, you got to go to the 12 steps. You got to go to meetings. You got to get a sponsor. You got to work the steps. You got to change your friends. You got to change the places you go to and the people you hang out with and the things that you do. And I did that. And I took it seriously. I didn't have any reservations like I did when I was on probation, because I knew this time what I needed to do, and I came to terms with it, and made an agreement with myself. And so I went to meetings, found a sponsor, and who I still love that guy to this day. We don't really keep in touch, but he still holds a really special place in my heart. I worked the steps, and did a lot of internal work and making amends to people. There's a good list of people I needed to make amends to,
bet,
right?
man.
Which,
And kind of to talk about that, because that's something a lot of people don't have experience with, and it's a vital part of recovery. It's incredibly humbling when you sit across from someone and say, I know I did X, 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 X to you, and I am so sorry. It's not so much about apologizing. Of course you want to apologize, but it's about letting them know
Right.
that you're owning
Right.
everything that you did to them.
taking responsibility and being comfortable with whatever the outcome is.
Yes. You can't expect them to say, oh, I forgive you. And
Right.
the dramatic music plays and you get a
Yeah.
hug and a kiss. And no.
Yeah. And I
Because sometimes
think,
they tell you to go to hell.
yeah, a lot of maturing came from that process of like cleaning my side of the street. I'm going to apologize. I'm going to make amends to all of these people. And regardless of whether they say they accept my apology or whether we end up becoming friends again,
Yeah.
I have no control over that, and being okay with that, and being okay with, I had some people I reached out to make amends to, and they're like, no thanks.
Yeah.
Glad you're doing well, but no thank you. And having to say, okay, I did my part. I think I don't consider myself a religious person, probably more so a spiritual person. And I know that, why maybe some folks are turned away from the steps with, a lot of the word.
Talk about the difference. That's really important because you hear it all the time from people who, well, I'd go to a meeting, but I don't like this whole God stuff.
There's a lot of God talk with
Yeah.
some folks, but I guess I always had the mindset of like, there's something here that I can learn, and I'm going to find what that is.
Yeah.
I can leave the God talk if it doesn't resonate with me, but there's gonna be stuff in here that resonates with me that I can learn from. And so I just had to keep that open mindset. But furthermore, I think the steps, even for people who have never had addiction issues, could be valuable for really anybody. The idea of like taking an inventory of yourself and identifying these things that you want to be better at and making amends. Like, we've all wronged, not just people in addiction, we've all wronged people. Like, what does it look like to make amends to those people in real time after you've done something wrong? And that's not just good for people in recovery. So anyways,
agree.
I think the steps are so valuable.
I agree.
And through my experience in the steps, guess what? Those feelings of not fitting in and insecurity, they're still there. I was still afraid. I didn't feel like I fit in to the 12-step groups. I'd walk into a room, same feeling I had when I was in high school. I'd walk into a party or into the classroom or whatever, and I still didn't feel a part of. And I think, to me, that says that was the underlying issue, right? Like, and I've heard this said before, that the drugs and the alcohol, like, that was a symptom of what I was experiencing, and I was trying to find a solution for that. And so those feelings were still there. And so I had to do a lot of work to find better solutions this time to those feelings, and that I think just came from a lot of internal work with my sponsor and a therapist, and talking to people, people who supported me, and learning to love myself was a major thing. Being comfortable in my own skin, being comfortable being alone was a huge issue for me. When I was in active use, I couldn't be alone. And learning to do that in sobriety, and learning who I was in social situations without drugs and alcohol was really hard. Yeah. Who am I, right, in really these situations? Yeah. I knew who I was when I was like the party guy, and I was drinking and using and making jokes, and everybody's having a good time, but like, who am I without all that stuff? Now I'm the person at the party, the sober guy. Everybody else is once I got to a point in my recovery where I felt okay again being around alcohol, or it's everywhere, right? I got to get back to living my life, but I'd get into these situations where people are drinking, and really I was really uncomfortable, and I'm like, I don't know who I am in these situations anymore. And so I think I of course didn't put myself in like bad situations. I wasn't hanging out with people who were doing drugs, whether it was like a small friend group and people were having a couple beers, or we're going to a ball game and people are having some drinks, or but it was a huge learning process for me to be comfortable with myself in sobriety, and be comfortable with the fact that I'm going to get tired sooner. I'm going to want to go home. Yeah. I don't want to take this thing until 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m. I'm hungry. I want to go to bed. I want to get up early tomorrow. Those are nice things. Those are nice things, and none of those existed when I was partying. I couldn't. I had to keep the party going, and now I was okay with being that guy who's like, I'm ready to go. I'm done.
Good for you.
And of course there are those people like, you're gonna leave now, or like, let's go to this spot after, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's just like being okay with saying, no, like this, it ends here for me. I got shit to do.
And having that self-awareness is it feels so good when you reach that point.
It does. Yeah. It took a little while to get there. But eventually I did, and it was probably 2 years into my recovery and my sobriety. I had been going to 12-step meetings, every week, at least a couple a week, meeting with my sponsor. I got to this point where it dawned on me that I was afraid to go anywhere that wasn't a meeting. I was afraid to go out into the world. I was afraid to get asked if I wanted a drink. Mm-hmm. And I was afraid to tell them why I didn't want a drink. I was still really uncomfortable with the fact that I was sober. Uncomfortable with telling people that I'm sober. And the only place I felt safe was in a recovery meeting.
How did you break out of that? And because I know you, when did this whole Phoenix thing come in? When did the athletic Vince emerge?
Yeah. I always had a passion for physical activity and sports. And, I remember the football coach back when I was in high school say, man, Vince, you've got a hell of a body. Like it's too bad your brain's in the shitter.
I remember such a coach thing to say.
I remember him telling me that. And I think I was about 16 or 17. And, mm-hmm. and because I would play kind of just like some football, out on the field, not officially with the team, but, and then I'd have some of the kids or the other athletes or the coach ask me why I don't play football. And I'm like, well, I don't have the grades for one, and I'm not going to get the grades, basically. So anyways, I always had a desire, like a love for music and a love for physical activity and fitness, but obviously could never really stick with either. But about 2 years into my sobriety, talking with my sponsor and one of our other good friends, I had shared this with them, that I was like, I felt like I wasn't getting what I needed anymore out of the 12-step meetings. I felt like I wasn't getting what I wanted out of life. Felt like I wasn't living life, and I was still afraid, and I needed more. And they had told me something that still sticks with me today, that basically my sponsor had said, you can go anywhere and do anything that you want in sobriety, as long as you have a sound mind and good intentions. You can do anything. And hearing that, up until that point, being sober was restricting me from doing things. And up until that point, I had finally realized, I didn't fully realize it, but I started to get kind of a glimpse that being sober was in fact going to allow me to live my life and allow me to do more. And that it was my substance use that was keeping me from living my life. I had been told about the Phoenix from my probation officer years back, and I never went. Naturally, my probation officer told me about it, and I didn't go.
Yeah.
But I remember hearing about the Phoenix, and so I went and checked it out. I went to a boxing class, and I remember feeling, for the first time in a long time, comfortable in my own skin. They welcomed me with open arms. For the first time in a long time, I didn't have to talk about my past or the things I had done wrong, my criminal history. Like, all I had to focus on was learning how to wrap my hands and hit a punching bag and work out with other people in recovery. And having that experience, I'm like, man, this is what I was looking for.
And the Phoenix is a for those who don't know, at least in Denver, it's a nationwide organization now, but it's you go into these gyms, you can work out with other people who are also sober.
Yeah, so they build sober community, and they do it through fitness or the outdoors or through arts or through music, and everything is free. And you don't have to talk about your recovery when you're there, but it naturally happens because you make friendships and relationships with the other people, and you build these really strong bonds. But the focus is on the activity and having fun in a safe and supportive environment where you can kind of rebuild your relationships and help create a strong foundation with your recovery. And so back to the relationships, the relationships I had early on really helped me. I don't want to say helped, but I was hanging out with people who were using, so naturally I was using. And so now all of my friends being sober and active, being a part of a sober active community instead of community who's using, then that's what I was doing. And it was incredible. I volunteered there. I knew I needed to stick around. And I basically haven't left. I've now been working there for I think about 6.5 years.
What do you do there now?
So I'm the manager of our community center downtown at 2233 Champa Street. So at that facility, we have a lot of fitness-based programs. We run a lot of social events, art-focused events, really trying to find ways to bring the community within that space to build sober community. So I run all programs and operations out of there now. And it's really been an incredible experience as a professional, but also as a person in recovery. Phoenix helped me be comfortable in my skin. I'm proud to wear a sober shirt around town. I'm proud to tell people that I'm sober and in recovery, and to share my story in hopes that it will help somebody else. And the Phoenix really helped me find that courage and that passion. And so really, really grateful to them.
This became Recovery 2.0 for you, essentially.
It did.
You know, there was the 12-step, which was beautiful, and then you were ready for something else to take you that next along your spiritual path.
Yeah. I did a lot of great internal work with the 12 steps and with my sponsor, and I feel that finding Phoenix, to your point, helped me find that next phase. And, you know, the Phoenix, their tagline is Rise, Recover, Live. And I feel like that live is what I was missing until I found the Phoenix. And I've found this new passion and pride and courage to go out into the world and know that I can do it sober, and know that there's thousands and thousands and thousands of other people who are in recovery doing the same thing.
And anyone can join you. It's free. The only requirement is
48 hours of sobriety. That's it.
That's a bargain.
That is a bargain. Anybody in recovery, the sober curious, friends, supporters, allies, everyone's welcome to any of the events with 48 hours sobriety.
And you're drumming again, right?
I am drumming again. Yeah. So I actually started our music program at the Phoenix, which from 2006 to about 2020, it was primarily physical activity. I helped start our music program where we were building that same sober community, but through music instead of fitness. And that has grown into a national program now at the Phoenix. And so coming back full circle to playing music, but in a much healthier setting, helping people recover using music. It was just such a surreal experience.
It's got to be surreal to, you know, this thing that you did at a time when you were doing so much damage to yourself, but you love doing it. You love drumming.
Yeah.
I love that feeling in recovery where you can go back to something that you loved and you don't have to do drugs to still love it. And in fact, you love it even more.
Yeah.
For me, a lot of it was you're going to Broncos games or Nuggets games. Part of the ritual was getting tanked, doing cocaine before the game, getting in fucking fights at the stadium with Chiefs fans. I still want to punch a Chiefs fan every so often, that to be sure. But I'm just kidding. But knowing that you could still do those things with friends, but you can leave that shit behind.
Yeah.
Grateful Dead music, Fish, I could do all this stuff without having to kill myself.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, it's all still there.
Yeah.
And you, being sober allows you to experience that and not have kind of a path of destruction behind you after you leave that event, and hopefully have the people with you have a good experience too. With you being sober, right? But it's been amazing.
And last, I just want to ask about your wife. How long you guys been married now?
So it'll be 3 years this September.
Yeah.
And
I mean, she stuck with you through, oh my gosh.
Yeah. So basically, dating on and off since 2007. And, I had a lot to make up for and a lot to do to prove to her that I could be the partner that she needed, with how much I put her through my active addiction, and, having to build trust with her. And of course, everyone else that I had hurt, with my family, but especially my wife. And luckily she gave me that opportunity. Luckily she gave me the chance to show her, because in the past it was a lot of talk, right? Okay, I'm going to get sober, I'm going to stop using, blah, blah, blah. But this time, I showed her that she's the person that I love and that I want to be with for the rest of my life and start a family with. And we have a son. And he's 14 months now, and just that being a father has been the most incredible experience that I've ever had.
What would you say to 15-year-old Vince right now?
Man, if I could look back and talk to a younger version of myself, it would probably be the version of myself where I remember this moment when I was in court with my mom, and I was probably around 20, and the judge was about to call my name, and I knew I was going to jail. And I left the courthouse. I left, and from that moment on, I was on the run. And the devastation that was on my mom's face and the interaction that her and I had after I left the courthouse was like just so sad. Of, you know, I can remember her saying, like, you're ruining your life right now, and crying. And if I could speak to a younger me, it would be that me on that day, to just give myself a little bit of hope, and a glimpse of how great life could be in sobriety, but also to let myself know that I was worthy of love and worthy of health, and that it was there waiting for me as long as I gave the effort.
That's great, man.
Yeah.
That's a great answer.
Thanks.
Vince, how do you say your last name?
Huseman.
Huseman is pretty simple. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.
You were terrific to talk
It's
to.
great to be here, Vic. I appreciate you, man.